Tonight, you're going to fall asleep completely defenseless. No weapon in your hand, no one standing guard, eyes closed, body still, for hours at a time. And you won't think twice about it. Now picture doing that outdoors, on open ground, with no walls, no locked door, nothing between you and animals that could kill you in seconds. Lions that hunt at night. Wolves with a sense of smell hundreds of times stronger than yours. Every one of them faster than you, stronger than you, built to hunt in the dark while you're built to hunt in daylight. And yet, for hundreds of thousands of years, your ancestors slept exactly like that, right out in the open, right in predator territory. And somehow, they weren't hunted into extinction. Let's actually look at how bad the odds were, because this wasn't a small risk. This was one of the strangest survival puzzles in human history. Start with what a sleeping human actually looks like to a predator. No claws, no sharp teeth, no thick hide or fur to protect the skin. Slow on foot compared to almost every predator that shared the same land. Bad night vision, some of the worst of any mammal our size. On paper, humans should have been one of the easiest meals available. And when you're asleep, you're not just weak. You're unconscious. No awareness, no defense, no ability to run. A sleeping human is, biologically speaking, about as vulnerable as prey gets. Now think about who your ancestors were sleeping next to. Lions, leopards, hyenas, saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas larger than any predator alive today, ancient wolves that hunted in coordinated packs. These weren't rare encounters. Early humans lived directly inside the hunting grounds of these animals for millions of years, with no walls, no locked doors, and for most of that time, not even fire. So here's the real question. If sleep makes you this vulnerable, and predators this dangerous were sleeping distance away every single night, why do you exist right now? Why didn't this get wiped out somewhere in the first 10,000 nights, let alone the next few 100,000 years? Anthropologist Karel van Schaik has spent years studying exactly this kind of vulnerability across primates. And one of his key findings is something that sounds almost too simple. Sleeping in a group isn't just social comfort. It's a mathematical defense. If you're one person alone, a predator has a 100% chance of finding a target if it finds you. If you're one of 20 people sleeping together, the odds that any single sleeper becomes the target drop dramatically. And the odds that someone in the group wakes up in time to make noise, throw something, or scare the predator off rise just as fast. Early humans weren't relying on individual toughness. They were relying on numbers. A predator sizing up a lone animal sees an easy meal. A predator sizing up a tight cluster of 20 humans, some of whom might already be stirring, sees risk. And predators, in general, avoid unnecessary risk. Getting injured while hunting can be a death sentence for a wild animal with no doctor and no bandage. A lion with a shattered jaw from a bad encounter doesn't heal in a hospital. It starves. This is where fire changes everything, and we know almost exactly when it entered the picture. The earliest solid evidence of controlled fire use comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dated to roughly 1 million years ago. Once early humans had reliable fire, nighttime completely changed. Researchers studying predator behavior around campfires have found something remarkable and consistent. Large predators, even lions, generally avoid approaching fire. Not because they understand what fire is intellectually, but because bright, flickering light and the crackling, unpredictable sound of flames trigger deep, instinctual avoidance in most animals. A campfire effectively created a rough 30-foot radius of safety. Step outside that radius at night, and the danger returned instantly. Stay inside it, and for the first time in the history of our species, sleep stopped being a nightly gamble against apex predators. This is one of the most underrated inventions in human history, not because of warmth, because of what it did to nighttime vulnerability. But fire alone doesn't explain everything, because fire had to be maintained, and someone had to stay awake to feed it. This brings us to something researchers now believe was just as important as fire itself: watch systems. Anthropologist Carol Worthman, who has spent years studying sleep patterns across small-scale traditional societies, found that hunter-gatherer groups rarely slept the same way modern humans do, all at once, all through the night. Instead, sleep was staggered. Someone was almost always at least partially awake, tending the fire, listening, watching the tree line. As that person got tired, Someone else would naturally wake and take over, sometimes without any formal arrangement at all. This wasn't a strict guard shift like a military watch. It emerged naturally out of differences in sleep timing between individuals, differences in age, and the simple fact that in a group of 20 or 30 people, someone is always stirring. Worthman's research suggests this staggered wakefulness may be a big part of why humans, unlike almost every other primate, sleep in relatively short, flexible bouts rather than one long, deep block. Your body may still carry the echo of this. Many people wake up briefly in the middle of the night for no obvious reason, glance around, then fall back asleep without remembering it in the morning. Some researchers believe this is a leftover instinct from a time when checking your surroundings in the dark before returning to sleep wasn't paranoia. It was survival. There's also the placement of the sleeping site itself, which mattered just as much as the sleeping arrangement. Archaeologists studying early human campsites have found that our ancestors were remarkably consistent about where they chose to rest. Elevated ground when possible, since it's harder for a predator to approach unseen uphill. Locations near rock walls or cliffs, which block one entire direction of attack, spots with wide, clear sightlines so no predator could get within striking distance without being seen first. This wasn't guesswork. Anthropologist Polly Weissner, known for her long-term studies of the Jew, Hoansi Bushmen of the Kalahari, has documented how deeply intentional traditional campsite selection still is today. Groups instinctively avoid dense brush, prefer open visibility, and orient sleeping areas around a central fire. This pattern likely stretches back hundreds of thousands of years, long before anyone wrote down a single rule about where it was safe to sleep. Even the architecture of a human camp played a role. Researchers studying reconstructed Ice Age campsites, including the famous mammoth bone dwellings found in Ukraine, have noted that structures were often built with entrances facing inward toward the fire, with sleeping areas positioned deeper inside, effectively putting a wall of watchful, semi-awake adults between the vulnerable sleepers and the open night beyond. Children and the elderly, generally the most vulnerable members of a group, tended to be positioned toward the center, while more capable, easily woken adults slept nearer to the edges. This wasn't written policy. It was survival logic passed down without anyone needing to explain why. And then there's something almost counterintuitive that some researchers have proposed, something that sounds strange until you think it through. Predators may have specifically avoided humans, not despite the noise and unpredictability of a human camp, but because of it. Wild predators generally prefer predictable prey. A herd of grazing animals behaves in consistent, learnable patterns. A group of humans sitting around an unpredictable fire, occasionally shifting position, sometimes making noise in the middle of the night, doesn't offer that same predictability. Some researchers who study predator behavior argue that unpredictability itself can function as a defense, since predators generally prefer targets whose behavior they can model and anticipate. Humans, especially in groups around fire with staggered wakefulness, were a genuinely difficult animal to read. None of this means it was ever completely safe. Fossil evidence tells us it wasn't. Cut marks and bite patterns on some ancient human remains confirm that predators did occasionally succeed. Early humans were sometimes killed and eaten. This wasn't a myth or an exaggeration built for dramatic effect. It happened. But here's the key detail that changes the entire story. It happened rarely enough, and the group defenses worked well enough, often enough, that the species survived, generation after generation, all the way down to you. Every single one of your ancestors, stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, made it through enough dangerous nights to pass life forward. Not because danger wasn't real, because the group, the fire, the staggered watch, and the careful choice of where to lie down each night worked just often enough. Here's the part that ties directly back to you, right now, tonight. That instinct to feel uneasy, sleeping completely alone in an unfamiliar place, isn't some outdated glitch in your brain. It's ancient. Some sleep researchers refer to something called first night effect, a documented pattern where people sleep noticeably lighter, with one half of the brain staying more alert than the other, the very first night they spend in an unfamiliar environment. Scientists studying this effect have found it may function almost exactly like a watch shift, keeping part of your brain scanning for danger even while the rest of you rests. Thousands of years after fire, permanent shelter, and locked doors, part of your brain still isn't fully convinced it's safe to switch off completely in a new place. So tonight, When you fall asleep behind a locked door in a warm, quiet room, remember what that same act of closing your eyes used to require. It used to require a fire someone kept burning through the night. It used to require other people nearby, some of them half awake without even realizing it. It used to require choosing high ground, clear sightlines, a wall at your back. Sleep was never simple for your ancestors. It was one of the most carefully engineered parts of their entire day, built by trial and error over hundreds of thousands of nights, so that the ones who survived could pass that quiet, dangerous ritual all the way down to you. If this pulled you into a part of human history you've never thought about before, there's more like it on this channel every week. Subscribe if you want to keep uncovering how your ancestors actually survived, the real research behind it, and what your body still remembers from all of it.